Counter-Terrorism Today. Up-to-date analysis with Dan Diker.
Welcome to Counter-Terrorism Today. I'm Dan Diker. A special program in honor of the 20th anniversary of the International Institute for Counter-Terrorism. Today we're going to be talking about breaking the Middle East deadlock. What does it take to transform the Middle East region from chaos to calm? And there are no two better people to discuss this with than the two gentlemen sitting in the studio right here in Herzliya, Israel, with me today. Professor Boaz Ganor, the Dean of the Lauder School of Government and the Director of the International Institute for Counterterrorism. Welcome, Boaz Ganor. We've been trying for months and months, I might even say more than a year, to get you into the studio, and you're finally in Israel.
It's very easy to bring me to the studio. Just tell me that Meridor is coming to the studio, and then I'm coming as well.
You just exposed the surprise. That's the surprise, ladies and gentlemen. We have with us one of Boaz's good friends and colleagues, and really one of the great leaders of Israel, Dan Meridor, former Minister of Justice, former Minister of Finance, also the former chairman of the Knesset Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee, and also a chairman of a number of committees we can't speak about publicly in the areas of national security and defense. Mr. Meridor, it's really great to have you with us here to discuss very important developments here in a region that I think it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say is really collapsing, in a sense, into the hands of Islamists. Professor Ganor, how do you see the deadlock in the Middle East today? Where are we at this moment in time? Are the Islamists winning?
Well, it's the mid of the process. We are just need to try to understand what is the situation, knowing that it's developing as we speak. Practically, what the Middle East saw in the recent few years, 5 years or so, is no less than tectonic changes. We see change of regimes, we see civil rebellions, we see terrorism with extensive number of casualties, refugees, and so on and so forth. The first question that we need to pose to ourselves is the phenomenon of ISIS, and what actually gave this backwind to ISIS to be able in a short period of time between the summer of 2014 up to, I would say, the summer of 2015, to be able to conquer about a third of the territory of Iraq and about a third of the territory of Syria, and altogether having control and territory which practically it's one of the biggest states in the Middle East, if this would have been a state altogether. And I think that one of the main reasons why they succeeded so well is the sophistication in the combination of military activity that they've conducted together with the psychological aspects or the psychological warfare. And they have managed to see to it that once they are coming to a new battlefield, to fighting either the Yazidics or the Kurds or the Iraqi army or the Syrian army, their enemies actually fled away with fear and didn't even fight them. Then the Americans came in and the international coalition, and the United States said, we are interested to stop ISIS, but no boots on the ground. Well, if they would have asked me or probably any other Israeli, we would tell them that when you are dealing with a hybrid terrorist organization such as ISIS, an organization that controls both territories and people, that organization which is entrenched within the civilian society and takes civilians as human shields, you cannot solve the problem with air bombings. You cannot solve the problem only without boots on the ground. At least I would try to persuade them to have sandals on the ground and not boots on the ground, meaning special units, if not brigades and battalions and so on and so forth. I was not surprised that their success was very, very limited. The Russians came in with a different approach altogether, with a non-liberal democratic approach, doesn't care for international humanitarian law considerations, the number of casualties, civilian casualties, collateral damage. And in my view, at least, they succeeded to hold back ISIS and actually to force ISIS to start its withdrawal as an outcome of their policy, which I'm not sure that United States or any other liberal democratic state could have used under these circumstances.
Mr. Meridor, when you hear the analysis of Professor Ganor, how do we think about the political will of the European powers in being unprepared to put boots on the ground?
I'd like to put it in a historic context. 100 years ago, the Ottoman Empire collapsed in the First World War, and a new regime was put in place in the Middle East by the colonial powers, Britain and France mainly. They created nations that never existed: Lebanon, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and others. They created states. They delineated borders. And this whole Middle East had a system that worked for about 100 years. Now it's under collapse. It was not democratic ever, either kings or military rulers or family ruling and so forth, but there was an order there. The Western technology brought on its wings the Western ideas and images and penetrated those societies. And people saw that there is another option, had discourse they never had before. You can change rulers, you can speak of liberties, of human rights and so forth. And these regimes were under attack from people who wanted democracy. Very few people, not masses, but 1%, 2%, like 100,000 people or 500,000 square in Cairo. And they were powerful enough to overthrow regimes. Mubarak, in Egypt, Tunisia, Yemen, and other places. And the West had the naive, though very good-willing approach that at long last, democracy comes to the Middle East. These ideas that were all Western, not Muslim, all the slogans were taken from the Western vocabulary, will bring down this very crazy anomaly that in no Arab country there's democracy. Here it comes. I remember talking with the American administration in 2011 when they were pushing Mubarak. He has to go now. I remember talking with Hillary Clinton, with other people in the administration, and when I asked, why do you push him, the answer usually was, we want to be on the right side of history, as if they knew that what was coming was democracy at long last. By the way, it was not only Democrats, Republicans, all the same. A good friend of mine, Elliot Abrams, wrote an article saying, vindication of Bush, here democracy comes. So many Americans and people in other parts of the world thought democracy is coming. What happened, in fact, is that they toppled down regimes and people had the right to vote. And they voted. Egypt, other places. And lo and behold, what happens? This paradox. What do you do when the democratic majority doesn't want democracy? When people who get the majority, like the Muslim Brotherhood, don't believe in democracy, like women's equality to men, human rights, the right to criticize religion or government. A real interesting question. In the end of the game, so far, and it's not the end of the game anyway, you saw that democracy didn't take any hold in any place. What you had is either an autocratic regimes, kings, rulers, military rulers, or religion. The reintroduction of, may I say, God into the scene after 300 years, or 250 years from the American Revolution, the French Revolution, where religion was limited to private. You don't do politics with religion. Religion comes back. Big way, as the Americans say. And you see religious powers fighting not only on rule, but on identity. Who are you? If you ask somebody in Baghdad, he won't tell you I'm Iraqi. He will tell you I'm Shia, I'm Sunnah. Ask somebody in Haleb or in Idlib or in somewhere in Syria, he will tell you I'm Alawite, I'm Kurd, I'm Druze, and so forth. So it's even about identity, not just about who rules what part. And the fight is not over. We are still in the eye of the storm, and it's a long storm. Even the glorious French Revolution took many, many years until it ended up with democracy. It went through guillotine and Napoleon. So I don't know what the end of the story here is, but we are in for a good number of years of no calm stability.
May I have a follow-up on what Dan was just saying?
Absolutely.
I would like actually to echo some of his views. I tend to believe that the Western countries in general, maybe the Americans in particular, and it's a bipartisan problem, has, I would humbly say, two misconceptions in reference to the concept democracy. A is that democracy is a miracle solution for violent activity and maybe even terrorism in particular. Well, when you analyze that and you check what really happens on ground, I'm not so sure this is true. Second is that free election, this is what democracy is all about. And democracy, as far as I understand democracy, is first and foremost a value system. It's a combination of civil society, of the rights of minority, of women liberation, freedom, of human rights. All of that, this is what democracy is all about. And yes, there is an important apparatus within a democracy which is called free election. But if you get only free election without all of the rest, you don't have democracy whatsoever.
This sounds like, in a way, this sounds like a Harvard and Princeton course in Samuel Huntington and Professor Bernard Lewis, the combination of the two of them.
We're not that age yet, none of us.
No, but students of them, students.
No, they are great people. Bernard Lewis is a basic friend for many years. He now is
almost at 100 years old, we should know next month.
I gave speeches already in 2 of his birthdays, in I think 1995. I think I admire the person. I go back to, I agree with everything that Boaz said now. But now we have a quarrel, a fight. And as I said, it's not about who the ruler is. It's much deeper than that. If you like, it's between modernity and the old regimes. Well, if they allow religion to be the alternative to logic, to the rules of life, they go back to Middle Ages. If they say, like the Muslim Brotherhood, the logo of the Muslim Brotherhood is Islam hu il-khal. In English, Islam is a solution. What does it mean? You have problems at work, they don't pay you enough. You know why? Because you didn't pray. Pray, God will reward you. Not learn more, work more. You have problems with your wife because you don't observe the commandments, the mitzvot as you need to. So do better there, God will reward you. This is what many people believed until Middle Ages. The West went out of this in the Renaissance and on, and especially in the last 200-300 years. So there's a huge fight in the level of values, of ideas, and we don't know who is going to win, and it's not going to be over because technology broke the walls. Nobody can seclude himself from the world. People see, people know. So it will be quite unstable, I predict, in the coming years. I don't think we have a quick fix to set it free. The question that I want to ask when I come to your question, how do we win over ISIS? The second question is, all right, what comes instead of ISIS? Do you want a democracy? Or do you agree with some dictatorship, do you want to change Jordan to democracy, making them send the king go home or some other place, or Saudi Arabia? Or do you accept that there won't be democracy in the coming future? It's a value and policy decision that needs to be made. Because it's not enough to topple down a bad regime, ISIS, whatever. We need to start working for some sort of stable Middle East. It's going to take time. It's not easy. And maybe one needs to postpone some great ideas of how you turn everybody to a Thomas Jefferson pupil in no time. It will take some time. Now, I am not pessimistic in the following sense. I think that if there is a will in those who are attacked, and this is the whole Western way of life, and even Russia, the world is attacked by this ideology. It's not a theoretical question. There are attacks on the ground, from a knife to a bomb to you see it. There's so much power in the hands of America, Russia, Europe, others. If you do it in a concerted effort, I think ISIS will not be able to stay in power. What do you do? How do you put boots on the ground or commando units on the ground? How do you do it from the air? It's an operational question, not an easy one. And I want to add something to this. Why we have a problem here? I don't want to go into American politics. We are there before elections now. But let me say the following. President George W. Bush used, for America, a Republican, force, the
surge, 2007.
Before this, two big surge was already the end of it. The beginning was two major campaigns, one Iraq, one Afghanistan. A major show of force, very impressive, shock and awe. You remember this term? But wait a day, wait a month, wait a year, take good breath and ask yourself, who won this war? Of which you spend about $3 billion, $3 trillion, sorry. And Americans ask themselves, we saw boots on the ground. We did everything we could. We are the best and most powerful on earth, and either Iran won or Daesh won. We didn't win it. So the fact that there's no appetite for boots on the ground, I understand it. It doesn't come from an Obama policy. It comes from the fact that when you use force, what you do with it, you expose the limits of your force. So it's not an easy question, just put boots on the ground. I agree, you can't win it just from the air. But what do you do? How do you, can you have a coalition of the people on the ground to help you to take the part of the job? Can you have more precision-guided munitions that attacks the heads, not masses? How do you have good intelligence about these people? There's really so much power, technological and firepower in the hands of those who fight now. Russians, their way, Americans, Europeans. I think there is a way to overcome it, but one needs, alongside this, one needs to plan the alternative. What will come when this, what is Syria? Will there be Syria again? Will it be confederated? Will it be split? Is there Iraq today? Will there be a new Iraq? What do we do with the Kurds? So we try to postpone questions that we don't have an answer to, but it's not a good policy. We need to discuss these things. When you have a goal, you may win. When you have no goal, you will never win.
Well, clearly, there's a question I want to raise. As we've been talking about identity and we've been talking about the Middle East, the Gulf Cooperation Council, in a population of a Middle Eastern population of 350 million Arabs, 85% of them Sunni. The overwhelming power of the Gulf Cooperation Council could theoretically address what Dan Meridor and you, Professor Boaz Ganor, are saying yourselves. What would it take to mobilize the very Saudi Arabia, the Gulf states, Jordan and Egypt, who today, by the way, are quietly seeking assistance from Israel under the radar, and trying to find some way to develop some counterterrorism coalition to stabilize their own region? Is that a realistic outlook for them to do it without international interference?
First of all, I wouldn't talk about international interference. I don't think that this process can happen without international involvement or international support or international backwind. I would use positive terms and not negative terms in this regard. And as a first statement, I would say that this cannot happen without changing the disc of the Western Western ideas in reference to regimes, in reference to democracy, and so on and so forth. Dan was asking the question, what will be the alternative? What would be after the day that things will stabilize? I think that one thing that needed to be understood by the Western democratic liberal world is that, in reference to democracy in this regard, is that democracy cannot live together with a Sharia law state. Now, this is something that we need to clarify to ourselves, and we need to clarify that to our friends in the Muslim world. Why? What is the essence of democracy? Who's the sovereign in democracy? It's the demos, it's the people altogether. Who's the sovereign in a Sharia law governed state? This is God. This is the basic contradiction between the two. So if you have elements which are trying to push forward to build Sharia law governed state, or by the way, between you and me, any religious law state, it could be Judaism or Christianity or whatever, then it's counterproductive. It's against the concept of democracy altogether. That is the first statement. The second statement, back to your question about this common interest, which growing in the Middle East among Sunni moderate Arab countries. We see it more and more. You know, it's funny, but I said to some of my American friends a few months ago, a year or two, I said to them, you know, right now it seems to me that sometimes Israel has more common interests with Saudi Arabia, the Gulf countries, Jordan, and Egypt than Israel with United States itself. Why? Not that United States is not still our best ally. Of course it is. But Israel and the Gulf countries and Jordan definitely support General Sisi regime in Egypt. United States at most giving him a cold shoulder. Israel, Saudi Arabia, the Gulf countries, Egypt, Jordan, are very concerned with the growing Shiite hegemony in the Middle East, are terrified from the possibility of Iran becoming nuclear. United States doesn't like it, but it's not an existential threat to United States. So what you have here now is a huge opportunity. It's a new region that right now is craving for different alliances, different cooperation, and I think all the leaders in the region has the responsibility to identify those opportunities and to take advantage of them.
Dan Meridor, how do you see Israel's role in what Professor Ganor is describing as the new regional architecture and new opportunities in this region?
I'll answer a question immediately. I want to comment and add something on democracy, not to create a wrong impression. Democracy for me is a must for me. I would fight for democracy. If I lived in a monarchy, I would not be able to tolerate it. I would fight against it. I'm fighting for democracy in Israel for all my life. And
so it's not a monarchy.
Right? That was the question that needed to be asked, right? We're not in a monarchy then.
I want to comment on this. No, democracy is not a given. It's not natural. It's something that you impose on society. You naturally would have maybe liked a king or somebody. It's not all societies are born democratic. No. You need to fight for it. And the fact that I'm not supporting now democratizing by force the Arab world is not because I don't want it, because I can't do it. I try to do it, I'll end up with the chaos that I have. So I think the time is not right to do it now. I'm not against it. I cannot tell America, don't speak for democracy. Do speak. It's important to hold this banner high because you are the standard bearer for the whole world. It's important that the free world has this ideology. And in the fight for ideas, we need to be there. But on real terms, in time frame, don't send the kings that are your allies home or outside their home. That to create the wishful thinking that democracy is going to replace them. Going back to your question about Israel, I'm going to say something that may sound a bit political. You know, in what we have now, in this chaos, this turmoil, there are threats developing. Iran has been mentioned, ISIS and so forth. And I don't think we can overlook the threats. But there are many opportunities here. And some people don't love opportunities because then their political agenda is left without anything to do. It's important to have a big threat and fight against it. We are known in doing that. I think that there are many opportunities here. First of all, let me say something not very common. I think security-wise, we are much better off ever in the past. Our nightmare for years was the Arab armies conquering Israel. Syria and Jordan from the east, the Jordan Valley importance, the Iraqis helped them with their brigades and divisions coming to Rome, the Jordan Valley, Ma'ale Adumim, Jerusalem, and what will happen? We are so small. Well, you know, for the last years, think of the neighbors around us. Egypt doesn't want to fight us for practically 40 years now. Jordan is the best ally we have. Syria doesn't have an army practically, so we are much better off security-wise in the old threat that we had and we prepared our army for. It doesn't mean that we don't have new threats, and one needs to take them seriously, but one needs to see the opportunities. And Boaz started to develop it. I think it's only blind people don't see them. I think that the shifting sands call for shifting alliances and ad hoc coalitions. The interest against the hegemony of Iran, nuclearization of Iran, the subversive activities of Iran all over the place, the need to work together intelligence-wise, because terror now is not limited to the territory. You need cooperation. All this brought many Arab states, not only those that we officially speak of, like Jordan and Egypt, who have peace with us, to cooperate with us, under the table, not on the table, for all sorts of reasons. I think that the need to talk with us is based on mutual interest. We have an interest, they have an interest. I would say that in the very unstable Middle East, if one is creative, innovative, and courageous in taking certain steps, you could make surface some of those negotiations and even relationship. And it's important for our legitimacy in the region. It's very important. I don't want to go into politics, but I think there's one issue that is crucial here. I think, I'm not in the intelligence now for practically 3 years, I'm out of it, so I don't know anything secret, but I know enough to say, or I assess that if we are ready to do certain things on the Palestinian issue, we can have much broader and deeper relationship, even in the open. They need this. I don't think we can have peace tomorrow morning. I don't think it's our fault. I think the Palestinians blew it several times. But there are things that we can do or refrain from doing, and giving that, doing and not doing, to, say, Saudi Arabia, Gulf states, to enable them to broaden and deepen and make public the relationship with us.
And each of the Palestinians, from their point of view, from the Saudi point of view.
Yeah, although I'm not sure the Palestinians have no capability to have a final agreement. We have relationship security-wise with the Palestinians that are very fruitful. We see it now. How the relationship with the PA, not with Hamas, of course, is very, very important. You see that what the Prime Minister said yesterday, that the decline in terror has to do with the cooperation with them. It's very clear. But I speak now of Israel in the region. Israel has a basic problem that peoples don't recognize it. We had Egypt, a great historic success, Begin, Sadat. We had Jordan with Rabin and Hussein. We need others. There are others who do it half officially, non-officially, under the table, many of them in North Africa and in the Gulf. This is the right time. If we don't do it now, it may not return. This is the right time to take some courageous steps and help them create alliances and coalitions and cooperation with us. It's very important. Now, America and Europe are vital and important, but we are not less vital, not only for us, even for them. So Israel may have a very important role if we are flexible, innovative, and politically courageous enough to do what I said and other things.
Professor Ganor, we're hearing from certain Arab friends and allies, or I wouldn't say allies, but friends of Israel, neighbors of Israel, that the possibility of a new regional structure to solve the Palestinian issue may be emerging because of the fact that more and more some of the moderate Sunni Arab states realize that the Palestinians at this point seem incapable of negotiating a bilateral agreement, or both sides are incapable of negotiating a bilateral agreement. And the idea has come up of the Saudi peace initiative again to give it a regional framework, whereas Mr. Meridor has said Israel has certain leverage on the Sunni world because of the belief by Sunni powers that only Israel would be able to take action against Iran if at some point it came to the need to take force. How do you see Israel's leverage in this calculus? Do you see that it has some leverage here to trade out for doing a deal on the Palestinian side, and then possibly leading the sort of a security alliance with some of its Sunni Arab neighbors?
I agree with Dan that Israel is a strong country, stronger maybe than ever, because the region become weaker, and a strong country should strive for solutions. I'm not saying that there is a solution out there that we just need to bend and pick it up and that's it, we're solving the problem. But I do not think that the status quo is positive, is contributing Israel. Actually, it's counterproductive for Israel, and therefore Israel should look for those opportunities, and if they're not there, Israel should try to create them as much as possible. Now, most of the Israelis right now, and regardless, by the way, right wing or left wing, believes a few ideas that I think the current government is promoting. The first argument is that right now we are living in tectonic changes in the Middle East, which on the face of it creates the whole region, much more dangerous. We see regimes toppling down. We see ultra aggressive terrorists popping up, such as ISIS and so on and so forth, atrocities all around, immigrations. This is very frightening neighborhood. It used to be frightening, now it's much more frightening for the Israelis. Right now, it seems to most of the Israelis, this is not the time to take any risks. Therefore, we should lay back, wait a little bit, see that the dust will evaporate, and then maybe we will take brave steps to go forward. The second argument that actually many Israelis buy into is, who do you want us to sign peace with? I mean, who's the Palestinian counterpart? We don't have a counterpart. Abu Mazen hardly represents his family or his wife. He doesn't really have any legitimacy within the Palestinian society. The third claim is, okay, and let's say that we would sign a peace agreement with Abu Mazen. And the day after, somebody will stick a gun to his head and will kill him on the spot. And then what? We don't have the West Bank to the important territory for Israel defense, and we have ISIS on the borders of the suburbs of Tel Aviv. How can we arrange that and sustain with that? Well, it's all true, but there is the flip side of the same coin, as we expressed before. Right now is very dangerous time, true, but it's also the only time, maybe the first time in modern history, that Israel has an opportunity and has common interest with so many Arab countries. I don't want to say Arab allies for that matter. This needed to be taken under consideration. Abu Mazen is not legitimate. Well, you should find a way to solve that. For example, I support the concept of referendum. I think that this process, and you were talking about the international package deal, which is crucial for such a process, a peace process altogether. We, the Israelis and the Palestinians, should see eye to eye the big rocks and then the small rocks, but then we need to wrap it up with a regional package deal, and the regional package deal should be brought to two simultaneous referendums, in my view. One in Israel and one in the Palestinian Authority, in Gaza and in the West Bank. Because at the end of the day, we need to understand that probably this is the end of the time of signing peace between leaders. From now on, we should start signing peace between nations. Referendum is paving the way for such a peace process to be successful, in my view.
Dan Meridor, what's your sense of it?
I think that I'd ask the question. You see, it is quite strange. People say that we have problems in our image in the West, in the world now. You could have seen yesterday the academia in America, in
UCLA.
Yeah, UCLA and other places. What is strange here? In the last 4 or 5 years, Arabs and Muslims committed such atrocities and such horrible things all over the world, beheading people all on television.
And mostly against Arab Muslims.
And against Muslims, against Christians, against everybody that they could have. And even if there is anti-Semitism, people don't like Jews, they hate Arabs now. The world hates, right or wrong, they hate the Arabs now. It's not easy to be an Arab in America or in Europe now, much more than to be a Jewish. How come that under these circumstances, they all accuse us for not having the solution? Are we that bad in Hasbara? Is this government so bad? All the facts are for us. Everybody sees what they are, and still they accuse us. Because I think that we have some things that we can do, and we don't do politically. I don't want to go into politics. It's not this program. But I think that the feeling is, rather than, it should have, the attempts to have peace that was initiated by Olmert, by Barak, the good guys of the Israeli side, didn't bear fruit. So it's not us, it's not entirely us. But because we act as if people think that we don't want a solution, because we settle all over the place, we don't set a line that is our line, we don't have a goal. What is the goal that we want? We lose a lot. And this is a big mistake, because we don't want to win in the way that they will all say, all right, we are part of you, because then we lose the whole project here, which is such a successful historic project. So we need to set a line and say what we want in terms of, say, the blocks or something of that sort, and act accordingly. I think that then, if there is logic, there will be much more support of us. We lose the support. So in fact, you just mentioned Abu Mazen and the initiative of the Palestinians now. They go to the UN. I'll give you an idea that I had, and I offered it to Netanyahu several times. It was not accepted. I think it was, forgive me for saying so wrong, it was accepted. Don't be passive. Don't be paralyzed. We should go to the UN Security Council and offer a resolution saying the UN Security Council calls on both parties, Israel and the Palestinian, the PLO, to negotiate full peace to end the conflict within a year, 2 years, whatever the time frame is, always attempt to get it. And here are the parameters. Borders take what we accepted in a way, what Obama called not 67 plus changes to be agreed upon, mutually agreed changes, something we can live with. But at the same time, say it plainly, 67 plus mutually agreed swaps or changes. Second, refugees to Palestine, not to Israel. And we are ready for that. Put it as your own proposal. Let's see what they say. If they say yes, let's negotiate. It's the end of the right of return. This is the historic victory. If not, it will be clear where the dog lies. It's not on settlements. It's because they don't accept the end of conflict, the right of return issue. And because we are doing things that are very controversial, and we don't put the accent, the focus on their resistance to end the conflict, we lose. It's a big mistake. And if we do this, and I would do these things like building settlements only in the blocks and saying it, not outside the blocks and so forth, I wouldn't do it just in the press. I would go first to the Saudi king, tell him, I do it for you. Let's put it in the open. I do it for you. You help us have an office in commercial things in Tel Aviv, in Haifa, in Herzliya, near the IDC, whatever. Go to the Moroccan. I mean, you have so much in your hands you can trade with, if you have the courage to do things that are in your interest anyway. We are in a position that is strange because, ask yourself, what happens if we win? And they say, okay, we give up. We don't want the state. Do you want this? This means we have no majority anymore. Or we are a part of the state, which we can never be. So if you are fighting a war you don't want to win, ask yourself what you're doing here. So it's a major issue, and it relates to the justice of the cause. The feeling of people, I see it in the world, I see a lot. For the first time, not that we have an interest, not interest, that the justice of our cause is put in question. It's dangerous to Israelis, to Jews, and to people in the world. So there's a lot you can do. I say this because the West and the world, so to speak, is important. This has very little to do with what I said earlier. We need to coalesce with the existing powers, in the Arab world. We can do a lot. It's not easy. I'm not sure we can solve every problem. I think we can't, but we can alleviate many of those hardships. We can show a vision for the future. I'm not sure the West shows a vision for the future for the Middle East. I don't think we have a vision for what we want with the Palestinians. The government has them. I have one. You have one. Smotrich has one.
I have one as well.
And Boaz, of course, is one. But what is the Israeli vision of the future, which we fight for 50 years now? What is it? We need to set it clear, and I think we'll have a lot of support because the world supports them on borders. They don't support them so far on the right of return. And the dog lies there. Let them change. If we don't do that, we're causing damage to us and to our cause.
Boaz Ganor, your vision for the future of this region?
Oh, look, being a seventh-generation Israeli and raising my family here, I'm optimistic. And I tend to believe, and by the way, looking around in the greater circles around the Middle East, I'm very concerned today with Europe and maybe the rest of the world, Africa, Southeast Asia, maybe even more that I'm concerned for Israel. So I'm optimistic, and I tend to agree with Dan on the fact that we are A, strong, and B, have the will to take advantage of the current situation and to promote Israeli interests in the region right now, and not wait until the dust will evaporate, because I'm afraid that once these tectonic changes will end to change, the process will end, then the new face of the Middle East will be decided for the people in the region and for Israel included. And I think Israel should contribute to the positive change of the Middle East and take those dangerous processes into a positive end.
Taking risks at a very risky time. That's the message we're getting here from Professor Boaz Ganor and Dan Meridor. May I thank you, gentlemen. This has been an extraordinary conversation about a region in crisis, but a region that may be coming out of crisis if certain processes happen. Professor Boaz Ganor, the Dean of the Lauder School of Government here at the International Disciplinary Center and the Director of the International Institute for Counter-Terrorism. And Dan Meridor, former Justice Minister, Finance Minister, and Chairman of the esteemed Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee of Israel's Knesset, as well as the former Minister of Strategic Intelligence. What did they call it at that time? They're renaming these jobs, Dan Meridor, all the time. It was intelligence and other secret things that we can't talk about. It's really great, gentlemen, having you here. And happy birthday to the International Institute for Counterterrorism, 20 years old and getting stronger, probably setting the agenda for the global war on terrorism. Thank you, gentlemen. We thank our listeners, and we'll look forward to having them in the next edition of Counterterrorism Today. Thanks for joining us.
Counter-Terrorism Today. Up-to-date analysis with Dan Diker.